Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, considering possibilities at the QB firing line heading into game number 8. And we get into a possible area of advantage for BYU in the matchup Saturday night. Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to see you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. And thanks as always for making us your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Today's episode brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50+ infections. So get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's Jase, jasemedical.com. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. And Chris, great to be back with you, man. And back to looking ahead. It's Tech and BYU coming up on Saturday. And we're going to focus in a little bit further on the Cougars coming up in just a moment. We'll hear from their head coach, and we'll talk about one area of disparity between these two teams that could obviously loom large Saturday night in Provo. But first, we'll kick it off focusing inward, and not necessarily the most enjoyable conversation to have as we talk about what to expect at the quarterback position this week, Chris, but I feel like we'd be foolish or naive to not discuss all the possibilities, because to this point in the season, well, we've seen all the possibilities so far. So why not consider what we may see this weekend? First, for something to ponder, let's take a listen to Texas Tech head coach Joey McGuire talking about Behren Morton and what would follow after that.
He's feeling good, and he's just really sore. Jake, feel great about Jake. I thought he did some really good things, and so was Jake. Brady Boyd would take all the twos. And then we got a couple guys, trying to decide who that third guy will be. The travel, because you go into a 70-man roster, in Big 12. And so who that would be is really kind of going to be depending on Tuesday and Wednesday of who can do certain things.
Trying to figure out your third quarterback to take on a road game on the middle of a week in the middle of the Big 12 conference is just it makes my stomach,
Not ideal.
It's just tough, man. And I think we need to. So at its purest form here, you're either going to be dealing with I'm just going to say, I'm going to guess compromised Behren Morton if he plays.
Yeah.
Just because he hasn't really been healthy. You've heard this from the head coach, and it's even more so now. So it just makes you wonder, at what level he would be at if he does play. But, the other side of it, okay, so let's just assume he doesn't. Okay. Let's just assume it's too much where he's not going to be effective, and he could hurt it worse, or whatever. Hadn't been able to practice all week. Just don't feel comfortable with what he can give you, and so let's go with the healthy freshman. Okay, so you either have a compromised kid with some experience in Behren, or you're going to go with someone who hasn't ever started a game on the road and all that, and Jake Strong. Okay, so let's just assume now it's Jake. One, the opposition is going – typically their scheme is that they load it up and they play – they try to stop the run. Hence the reason that TCU, I think, threw for nearly 500 yards last week. And so what do you think they're going to do with Jake Strong? My guess would be they'll try to say, hey, man, let's see if you can do it too, because we're not letting this Taj Brooks young man go crazy.
They would love to see 59 attempts from a Tech quarterback on Saturday night, which is what they got from Texas Christian's QB.
That's right. Although TCU at home was good enough to expose it, and they just threw it all over the lot, and
not sacked once in 59 attempts.
Was not sacked once. And BYU is one of the worst teams in the country at getting to the quarterback from a sack standpoint. I think they only have 7 sacks all season, which is near the very bottom.
Buddy, I like to hear that.
Yeah,
I like to hear that.
That's right. But, that's where, okay, so that's the way that the Jake thing could go, is that, yeah, you're right. They're more than likely going to go, man. Because I think typically how you beat BYU is what TCU did. You spread them out and you make them chase you all over the field because they don't typically have a ton of team speed. They're built more like a Big Ten program or something along those lines. But behind Jake, you do have Brady Boyd. Quinn Ewers' high school teammate at South Lake Carroll. How about that? And obviously Brady Boyd wasn't playing quarterback at South Lake Carroll because Quinn Ewers was.
Possible late season matchup in a few weeks.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I'm knocking on wood. I'm sorry I said that out loud. My bad.
He is more of I think he's got some of it in his background. I think he would be more like a, run the options, zone read, quick game type basics. He's been, the thing about Brady is I think there was some talk about them almost kind of trying to redshirt him. Hence the reason you haven't seen him much in the wide receiver rotation. Because if you look at the way the wide receiver classes are stacked, there's a lot of upperclassmen that are all going to leave at the same time, potentially. And so I think you were trying to let's hold one back. And Brady had been dinged up in the spring and all that. Anyway, but bottom line is he's here. He's now up. He has been sitting with the quarterbacks for the last couple of weeks. Been practicing quarterback and all those things. So it's kind of a fascinating deal. Where it gets really wild though is behind him. Which, at this point, let's just get weird. Miles Price, Xavier White, Nehemiah Martinez. I think, a combination of these types of guys that I think you would keep it simple. I don't know how much you would actually throw it, if ever, out of those kinds of formations. But you're just kind of – because – Cooper Lefebvre, who is on the team, is not a real option to take a snap in a Big 12 game. Will Burns is not a real option to take a snap in a game. And that's really the only other people listed as a quarterback on your roster. And Cooper Lefebvre was just added 2 or 3 weeks ago when Tyler Shuck went down and they needed somebody else to help him with practice. Cooper's been on the team before and great kid and all that. But it's like, okay, what are we realistically willing to do during a game? Right. Especially a meaningful game. And so I think you need to be very prepared for this possibility.
Yes.
I think you need to be very prepared that Baron Morton doesn't play or is not even there.
Wow.
And like he could be and he could play. I'm just saying, like, anybody that's like, yeah, Baron's going to be fine, he'll play. I just think that people need to understand Jake Strong could take the first snap on Saturday and he could be literally the only quarterback you've got. And then you're to receivers and skill players behind him.
Look around you, Ellen. We're in the 7th circle of hell. Embrace the horror, folks. And season's greetings. The holidays are just around the corner. Get that Christmas shopping done early. Okay.
ELE. Everybody love everybody, man.
We'll put that to the side for now and just hope for good things. But here we are, and I'm sure you saw like I did. Jake Strong take a shot the other night, I guess, on one of the carries that you kind of felt like, how's he feeling this week? So there is plenty to keep an eye on as far as that position, as has been the status quo essentially for the better part of, I don't know, going on 7-8 years now. So stick with us as we keep an eye on this developing situation. Coming up next, we are turning our attention BYU way. We're going to hear from their head coach on what went down last week, and we'll get to one specific area where so far in this season, BYU has been much better than Texas Tech. That's coming up on Locked On Texas Tech. First, today's episode brought to you by Jase Medical. And in this day and age, everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones when hit with the unexpected. And that's why Jase Medical is offering the Jase Case. The Jase Case includes 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you peace of mind. So you're not just hoping for access to medication during an emergency. With Jase Medical and the Jase Case, what you need is already in hand. And they make it simple, handling everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery, along with ongoing consultation and care. And with shortages, pandemics, reliance on China, and general supply chain issues, You need to be prepared now more than ever. So to do just that, head to jasemedical.com, where the process is simple. Just fill out a form and bam, prescription life-saving medications are headed to your door. And right now, save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using our code LOCKEDON at checkout. Again, that's jasemedical.com, JASE medical.com, and the code is locked on for an added $20 off at checkout. And don't be caught unprepared with the Jase case from Jase Medical. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and the official sportsbook of Locked On. And fall is in the air. Helmets are on heads. Briskets are on smokers. And the action is with America's #1 sportsbook. And there's never been a better time to join in on that action than right now, because new FanDuel customers can bet only $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. So dive in and join in on the fun with FanDuel by downloading their safe, secure, and easy-to-use app, where you can bet on all things under the sports sun. And when you're a winner, you're always paid instantly with FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed with FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Glad to have you along for the ride on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Hope you're subscribed on YouTube, wherever you get podcasts, so you never miss an episode. Let's talk Brigham Young University. We'll get into, before the week is over, who the hell are these people? I got no familiarity with BYU. Pretty uniforms. Looks like they're rocking something slick Saturday night. That's about all I know. Steve Young, Ty Detmer was 55 when he was there. I don't know. We got some 45-year-old family men that are going to be taking snaps on Saturday night. Not sure. Keep your eyes peeled. We'll get further into that, the BYU personality, coming up tomorrow. But first, Chris, wanted to get into what happened with BYU a week ago, because it was a shellacking in Fort Worth, 44-11. This is a week after they got a touchdown win over Cincinnati. Big 12 life has not been kind to the newcomers, save for a Hail Mary or beating one another up. 38-27, it goes the wrong way for them against Kansas. That was after a road win over Arkansas. So how you're processing what the Cougars are to this point in the season, I guess, is up to you. But let's take a listen to their head coach, Kalani Sitake, processing what went down last week in their loss to the Horned Frogs.
The effort's there. We've got to do our part in all the other parts. So that's the other factors that go into earning a victory, and that's all the little details, small, simple things. And then if you want me to be honest with you in terms of, like, the turnovers were a wash, really, right? But if you're looking at what would really been helpful, is that our offense were in third and long for the majority of the game, and we didn't convert third downs. And then on our defense side, we had way too many third down conversions, and so we had opportunities to get off the field. We didn't do that defensively, and offensively, we didn't win first and second down enough to make third down more manageable. I think the average third down was 9+, so that's not going to go well for us. And in order to do that, we have to be more effective as a team on offense, and defense got to get off the field.
All right, we found somebody who's had it a little worse than us on third down, so I like to hear that. A Niner would be good this week. Chris, what do you make of the last few weeks for the Cougars?
You know, I think at the time, BYU kind of like put themselves on the radar a little bit and surprised people by going to Fayetteville and winning that game. It was a close game. They ended up going to Fayetteville and winning, which is, again, just not easy. However, since then, Arkansas is just not very good. They are 2-5 overall. They're 0-4 in the SEC. They hung with Alabama last week, made it interesting after Bama was rolling. So that's really their big win. They also have a home win, a fairly close home win, their only Big 12 win over Cincinnati, which is, maybe the worst team in the Big 12 on paper, at least. Cincinnati just got worked at home by Iowa State. So, but I think BYU is, they're not going to be easy. I think they're just kind of solid. This is like I don't know if it's if this is like a more of a Big Ten deal, or if this is more of like an Iowa State kind of, this is just going to be kind of a grind game, I think, just because they're not, they're not overwhelming really anywhere. They're pretty good in some statistical categories. They're really bad in others. But this is a program that, I mean, Kalani Sitake's been there for 8 years. He is way over 500 with his career record. I think like 60-36 or something. So this is a program that goes to bowl games every year and all these things. But I think and then I thought it was also interesting that Vegas has you is a favorite, or at least did, to open it up like around 3.5, 4.5 points.
Yep.
And I think it's generally because maybe you have a little more juice, a little more speed. I don't know. I'd be curious to know, like, kind of the thought behind why you would be a favorite. And obviously, BYU at home at nighttime is not going to be easy, because everybody will tell you. I've heard it all summer long. I've talked to people this week on the tech staff that have actually coached, against BYU and all that, and they say, "Oh, it's a tough place," just because they fill it up no matter what. It's just kind of one of those deals. Hence the Iowa State example. It's also, here's your more Iowa State comparisons. It's also on a natural grass field, which you don't typically play on ever. In fact, maybe Iowa State is the only other. I don't know about some of the other new additions to the league, but I think yeah. So it's just kind of, there's some similarities there, but that's kind of how they're built. There's not a lot of explosiveness there. They just kind of play these grinded out games, but they are typically older and disciplined and all those things. And it looks, you can look at the same BYU team now as you looked at 20 something years ago, and it's kind of the same type team.
Yeah, double-digit win seasons back-to-back just a few years ago. Like you said, a lot of continuity there with
Zach
the head
Wilson.
coach.
I think that was Zach Wilson led double-digit win seasons in those years.
So their identity is there. Some seasons working out better than others under Coach Sitake, but obviously they've had continuity as a program, something that makes me green with envy as a Texas Tech fan, going back to some of these transitions over the last decade and a half. But you're right, statistically, before we get to something that could prove to be an advantage for them or any other kind of marginal or mediocre team, we'll get to that in just a second, but statistically, there are some things that are eye-popping and not in a good way. 2.4. You know what that is? That's their average rush for the season. 2.4, Chris. They've gone 2.8, 2.5, 0.4, 2.52 the last handful of weeks. If there was ever a get-right opportunity for a defense that just gave up, I think, 250-ish sack-adjusted rush yards against K-State, it's got to be here. I hate to put too much pressure on them, but, man, that bar is going to be set high to limit something that so far has only gone for 2.5 per touch, man. I don't know that I've seen a number that low in quite some time, maybe for a game here or there, but a season average, that is poor.
Yeah, they have a what is, I think, supposed to be like a first-round offensive tackle that transferred from Oregon to BYU. He's on every draft board, and yet, yeah, it's just that part of their game is not working at all. I mean, they are, I think, second worst in the country. They're averaging, I think, 65 yards a game. I think only Hawaii is worse at 55 yards a game. So we're talking about running game, and does Taj Brooks have enough carries, and this is what BYU's defense is going to do. No, this is where you can really win this game Saturday night, is you just let them get next. Because and I'll tell you what, here's a good comparison for you.
First, today's episode brought to you by eBay Motors, and they've got everything you need to maintain your vehicle and keep that ride or die ride alive, or elevate your car's game to the next level of performance. Whatever you're looking for, they got it at the right prices. Superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, exhaust kits, and accessories of all kinds to fit your style, whether it's speed, power, or design you're into. eBay Motors has got you covered with over 122 million parts for your 2, 3, or 4-wheeled baby. Just head over to ebay.com/motors, where you're going to always find exactly what you're looking for, and at no risk because of eBay's guaranteed fit. Your part is guaranteed to fit just right every time, or it's your money back, keeping you burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to keep your ride or die ride on the road and moving your life forward at ebay.com/motors. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only. Exclusions do apply.
This is where you can really win this game Saturday night. Is you just let them get next, because and I'll tell you what, here's a good comparison for you. Before the Kansas State, I think ran for 250 plus, but before that you'd stymied Baylor, right? I mean, right. They just hadn't done well. BYU runs a lot of the same running schemes that BYU does, because that's where Jeff Grimes from Baylor, that's where he came from. He came from BYU as the OC, and so they run a lot of that wide zone and what they call pin and pull and a lot of those things. And Tech seemingly played that extremely well in Waco. May get a second chance at BYU with a bigger crowd and all those things. So I don't, and I'll tell you what else they are. And we're about to talk about this a little bit, but you heard Sataki say it, but their third down conversion rate is also close to the NCAA worst. They don't convert third downs, but I think like 30% of the time, which is like, I think like that's close to 125th worst in the country or something. I think like Tech's offense is like, I think, somewhere around 50% or higher, on third down conversions. But these guys, and again, part of it is because they can't run the ball. So it's 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 9, not what suits them best.
9 yards on average. You heard him say there on third down. That's tough sledding for anybody. Let's wrap it up, Chris, with this aspect of the matchup, and one that as a Tech fan puckers me up a little bit, because I think if you're talking about things that can kind of erase, say, a talent margin or a depth margin or whatever difference in these two rosters there might be, particularly on your home field on a Saturday night, turnover margin. And if you look at these two, basically the opposite. I think 11-7 the right way for BYU. You're 11-8, I believe, for Texas Tech, going the wrong way as far as giving it up 11 times, only taking it away 8 times. One of the big disappointments from last week, you're the only team so far that didn't turn over Kansas State this season. You had a goose egg, had some opportunity, but you weren't able to make it happen. Had a goose egg in that column. It was a wash for BYU last week. I think 2-2 for them and Texas Christian as far as is concerned. But this is something that obviously can close that gap, if there is any gap between these two teams. And you have got to try to be clean in that column. And by the way, we're saying that roughly 10 minutes after discussing quarterbacks number 5, 6, and 7 possibly getting a snap. Here we go, buddy. Buckle up again. Did I say that already once today?
Yeah, well, and this there's two things that factor into this. I think we spend a lot of time about how many mistakes your offense has made, but you also, you've lost 2 home games this year, and in those 2 home games, you've turned it over 7 times, and you have 0 takeaways. So they're both a problem. And I think you even go back to the road game last week. Barron threw the interception and Taj fumbled, and I don't. You've got to be able to create more of those kinds of plays on defense as well. But yeah, whether it be Barron or Jake, I think you've got to be careful. And this may be a game where it's okay to throw it in the stands. It's okay to punt. BYU has an elite punter like you do. And so that, again, more kind of Iowa State type stuff, and that the weather will be great this time, but this may be more of a grind and field position type deal. I don't know, but I just don't think you want to chance anything and force anything via the interception. But you've got to be able to affect the opposing quarterback and Keaton Slovis, and make something happen there. I think you got the strip, the fumbles and the strips and all those kinds of things against Baylor, and that's what you need in this one. You need more of those kinds of plays, and then less throwing an interception down the sideline or Taj fumbling, which is very uncharacteristic. So, but that's partly how BYU is now. It didn't work this past Saturday, but that's partly how that they've kind of won and been in a lot of these games, and they haven't played the toughest schedule. Make no mistake, their record is better than yours, but your schedule has been, I think, tougher. and all those things because I just don't think they've tested themselves like you have. But how they did beat Wyoming in Provo last year. How about that? I thought that was an interesting similarity. So.
I mean, they do have a winning record. They're sitting here at 4-2. They got a road Power 5 win in the non-conference we talked about with Arkansas. So going to their house, you certainly have to give some respect for what's been done so far, regardless of what 44-11 was last week. And again, that's not what you like to see necessarily either.
Well, and
a highly motivated team coming into it.
And a lot of people were I think raised the eyebrow when TCU was favored in that game. TCU had just gotten worked over at Iowa State the week before.
Right.
And Sonny Dykes like, this is the worst offense I've ever seen. Like we're just, Chandler Morris had gotten hurt. And TCU comes back home, BYU is seemingly rolling. They're coming off of a bye week, but then TCU was favored by, I think, 5 or 6 points. And I heard it all last week. Why is TCU favored by so much in this game? I think now we saw that. And so
they were way off, Chris, in the desert. It was 33-6.
That's right. That's right. But I think that it showed you that I think, you kind of get a feel for BYU and some of the weaknesses there. But again, I go back to you spread them out and make you chase them around. It's kind of been the MO for years against BYU. If you're good enough to do that and execute and all that, because they just typically lack team speed.
2 picks last week. 8 of their 11 takeaways have come via interception. So whether it's Baron Morton, Jake Strong, or whoever it might be, steal those nerves, boys. Steal those nerves. Hold the line. I don't know. Maybe series number 1 before they trot out there. Can I offer you a shot of whiskey, a stiff drink, maybe something just take the edge off, because it could be some live fire for either of those quarterbacks. And that's one thing that we kind of gloss over when we talk about the injury to Baron Morton, Chris. How many starts does Baron Morton have under his belt? If it is Morton, if it's not even Morton hobbled, I mean, the dude is still relatively early on in his maturity and progression. So this is going to be a big challenge coming up tonight for whatever quarterback it is.
Hold the line. A great Toto song, I think.
Hold the line.
There you go. It's a shout out to the 80s.
Let's go.
I talked to some of the players this week too about, Jake just in general, because we're all learning about him, right? And they all said he's very confident. He's very smart. He gets away with playing quarterback at I don't want to say he's undersized and he's not an elite athlete, but he gets away with just because how gritty he is, how smart he is, and just kind of he's got this level of belief in himself. And maybe that's what got him in trouble, against Kansas State. Because if you go back and look at the one play, I think over the middle, Xavier White, if he makes a better throw there, Xavier White and that Kansas State DB that was on that sideline, they have a foot race, and otherwise it's going to be a long. But he just missed him, and that's the difference between high school and college. Is a slightly inaccurate throw goes back the other way, in college, whereas maybe in high school you could get away with it. So, but I think a lot of people really like him, have a lot of confidence in him. And I think that him being here for those 6 to 8 months back in, since January was here, I think that does nothing but benefit him in a situation like this. And keep in mind, he has gotten a lot of reps in practice for the last 3 weeks-ish. Because of Barron's inability to be a full go in practices because of that shoulder issue.
Maybe having an opportunity to see what that's done for him coming up on Saturday. Only
we shall see.
Time will tell. The learning will continue tomorrow. We'll take a closer look at BYU as a program. Of those first 4 additions, the one that I thought would be the most significant or impactful for the Big 12 long term. So we'll dive into that BYU experience on the other side as we continue to get ready for Red Raiders and Cougars. Chris, thanks for the time as always, man. Enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Here again, mañana. We will do it. Go Red Raiders. Guns up. All that stuff. Keep hope alive. We need it more than ever.
That's right. And subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. We need it more than ever. For Chris, I'm Casey, and we'll see you for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.